Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Second Cup of Coffee. Pastor Tom here with you. We're on week 4 of our series, When God Says No. We have the awesome opportunity, honor to have Rachel Tucker here. She is a dear friend. We've known her 17 plus years, and I know I met her when she was born. So it's not, it's 17 years. Her and her husband, Micah, have been great friends of ours, and she runs a She runs a ministry called Cherish, which she's going to explain to you in a minute, kind of what that is. The reason I had her in on this particular month is this: when God says no, and we go against that no, we've talked about that through the last 3 weeks. There is always redemption in God. So when you get to the end of the story with Cain, in the next chapter, there's this verse: then men begin to call on the name of the Lord. Rachel walks with particularly young women, high school age, what would you say, 14 to 18?
We do 13 to 24.
13 to 24. And they're literally making decision out of a bad decision to make a good decision and a God decision. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Okay. So I want to turn it over to her so you can hear what Cherish is, what she's about, what they do day in and day out to walk with people while they're making this decision, because I'm hoping that her testimony, the testimonies that she's going to share, is going to help you overcome and know that on the other side of the cross, there's always redemption if we choose to make a different decision. So can you just kind of introduce yourself, who you are, what you do,
Sure.
and tell us a little bit about Cherish.
Awesome. Thanks. So Cherish is a outreach ministry for pregnant teens and young moms. And so it started about 10 and a half years ago, actually through a really tough circumstance where a young woman from LA, from one of the housing projects that Micah and I used to minister in, was almost murdered in front of her kids. And it became a prophetic moment where God spoke to me that he wanted me to step into this role to minister to young moms. And the challenge is that when a young woman has a child, before she has a career, before she has a home, before has that preparation, then both she and her child are extremely vulnerable. And so the children of young moms, as well as young moms themselves, are exposed to very high rates of violence. And
you had she just had a 10-year anniversary gala. We were there. You had a statistic, I don't mean to interrupt, but it was very profound. I mean, I can't exactly remember it, but it was about that violence in regards to them being, do you remember which one it was?
So there's a couple of things. So there's exposure because of the age of the moms. So 75% of kids that are in foster care went into the system when their mom was 21 or younger. So you have that part. And then while child abuse and domestic violence can happen really to anyone, it's concentrated in poverty. So a child that is born into the poorest home, so you're talking about nobody has a job, so there's either disability or welfare money coming into the home, versus a child who is from, the richest home. Yeah. There's a 3,700% increase from that child at the bottom to the top. So, and then for moms, it's the same. So they have a 700% increase of being abused.
So you take let's just say 16-year-old girl, makes some, bad decision, gets pregnant, probably say he's 16, 17. I was that age. You don't know what you're doing. Sure. Right? You don't know how to resolve conflict, right? You're not rich. That just becomes very, I don't want to use this word, somewhere where I can come toxic, in the sense that there's two people trying to figure a lot out and they're bringing a third person into the midst of it, not counting all of the people that are ancillary to that. Parents, grandparents, uncles, whoever else is involved in that, right?
And then the other factor is that a lot of people are like, wow, these young moms, they're having a child, like this is so tragic, they're messing up their life. And the reality is that 2/3 of teen moms were sexually abused before they got pregnant. So for them, I've had lots and lots of young moms who've come into my office and have said, my child is the only good thing I've ever done. And for people who, teenagers who are in foster care have a very high risk of becoming teen parents. And for them, this is an amazing thing that they have something that belongs to them. We're parents. We know that that's a really unrealistic view of what your child is going to be, right?
Right.
They're a need machine.
Yeah.
And so they're not, a lot of young parents, they have a dream that when they have this baby, they're going to have a family for the first time.
So that's a lot of pressure to put on a kid, right?
Yes, who's just crying and has a diaper change that needs to happen, and all the financial things that happen when we have a child, where all of a sudden you need a lot of stuff that you didn't need before. So as you're saying, pressure comes in. And the families, not every young mom comes from a troubled background as far as her family, but the majority do. So there isn't a lot of soccer moms who are like, hey, honey, let's help you graduate from high school. If you want to go to church, I'll drive you. There's very little of that.
Okay, so I want to put a pin in that because that's where we're going to get to eventually. We're taking time to, and I want Rachel to explain to us the reality, because I don't understand the reality because I don't walk in it necessarily, right? And so when you begin to understand the pressure, begin to understand the statistics, you begin to understand like, wow, yes, they made a mistake. Or, okay, I'll call it, they willfully sinned. Fine, whatever, however you want to define that, right? They went against a hard no. But where's the redemptive end of that and what she was able to create? And I want to go back because you said you were called into this. And then when you told me that story years ago, you said something specifically to me. And correct me if I'm wrong, but as I remember it, you said God told you this is all around you. You just don't see it.
Yep. And then he really gave me a strategy, which was if there's a young woman in our community who's being beaten by her partner or is being shoved out of a moving car, or
and these are all things have happened.
All things that happen. The young women who are sexually abused in our community. Do they have two Christians' phone numbers on their cell phone?
Oh wow!
And that, because there's a level of relationship.
Yes.
It's not like, we're just going to give you these groceries or something because I'm so good and you're so in need. It's not that. It's the level of relationship that you have my phone number. Mm-hmm. And I get calls before the police.
Wow.
And it's a level of trust that's really God-given, but it's intentional. That if these things are happening in our community and there's nobody of faith who's coming in and speaking God's truth in that situation, is praying into that situation, is walking in the redemption part of that situation. There's no redemptive part that's just going to happen in and of itself. Because if you're not getting the call, who is? Who is getting the call?
I hope that if you don't grab anything, grab that. God is calling us, even though somebody went against a hard no, to still be part of the redemption.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's transition a little bit. How does that look like? Like they have your phone numbers, but it's not just that. I mean, you meet them on so many different levels, but I want to stay in this place of relationship, but also with the other levels, because you have a curriculum, you have one-on-one mentors who don't make them. Well, if you come to me, they go to them. Again, we went to the 10-year gala that she had, and we heard from ladies there, teen moms, and every one of them, I think, mentioned their mentor. It either was Rachel or another lady, and this is what they taught me, and this is what they helped me with. And I love the fact, and I love it was two, because Jesus sent them out 2 by 2, right? So it doesn't all fall on you, right? Or whatever that is. And so can you walk us through a little bit of just the practical of what that relationship, how it really plays out in these young ladies' lives? So
we have 3 core values. The first is that we help moms get what they need to take care of their kids in a safe way.
Okay.
So kids are expensive, and all the gear is expensive, and so when you don't have resources, you make do. And some of those ways that people make do are not safe, like putting the kids in the floorboard so the police don't see, but they don't have a car seat. Or everybody being in the same bed and you have 5 different people in the bed and you have a newborn and it could be, an unsafe situation. Or just the practical reality of clothes for a child to wear. So I didn't say this at the event, but there's something inside of parents that's so deep that we need somebody besides us to see value in our child. When someone says your child is called by God, when someone says there's something special about your child, it means something so deep on the inside of you. And so when we start caring for someone's child, it opens the door to a relationship of trust. So that's our first. Then the second, as Pastor Tom talked about, was we have life skills lessons. So these are the kinds of things that traditionally would be passed down from parents to children. But when we have families that are not healthy enough or good enough communicators to make that happen, then we teach all those things as far as relationship and what is forgiveness versus reconciliation and how do you work through conflict and what's positive parenting. Even learning that like it's good to tell your child that you love them and to there's so many people in our culture here in Southern California that are taught if you show affection and verbal kindness to your child, you're making them weak and you're spoiling them.
Wow.
So we're coming from a biblical perspective. God literally pours his love on us every single day.
Right.
And this is a healthy way of bringing up our kids. It doesn't make them soft, it makes them secure. So there's those tools.
Oh, that's good. Doesn't make them soft, it makes them secure. That's awesome.
So financial planning, all those kind of things. And then those are the bridges. Where we want the moms at Cherish to get is their own relationship with God. And this is a taste to see that the Lord is good. For people who are severely traumatized, we see around the world in missions work, but also here in the United States, all of their trusted caregivers have betrayed them. So their interest in knowing God is very minimal or non-existent.
Right.
They don't know that there could be benevolent care for them.
Right.
So every part, when you work with a really traumatized person, they're always like, well, what's your angle? Like, what are you trying to get from me?
What's the game? Right.
And so when we can stay in a trusted position, right, and do what you do for your children, you build that trust, because when they're teenagers, you need them to trust you, right? So, so we're building that, and that is literally putting the taste of wanting to know God in them because of the sweetness of his love being poured out.
It's almost like you repairing the image of God in their eyes because it's been shattered by people who didn't represent him necessarily, but should have.
Yes.
Wow. And so that place where now they're probably, when they come in, they may just need help, but you're bringing them along to where they can establish a new beachhead, as it were, in their life and in the generations to come. By, look, now I have the skills, not just, and I like what you said, like, I don't just give them the stuff as much as you do, and we don't have time to get into everything that she does, but she wrote a whole curriculum, a whole book. They literally walk them through not just practicals, but discipleship, the power of forgiveness. And I, if we had the time, she could probably give you story after story after story of deliverance that comes through forgiveness.
Yes.
But that forgiveness doesn't come often, probably the day they walk in to Cherish. They're like, hey, I'm even 18, scared to death, I got no money, right? I don't want to abort my child, which is a whole other thing. You pointed out at the Cherish event that most of them have abortions because they don't have, I think you said, financial stability.
Relationships.
The relationship's bad or non-existent. And then I don't remember what the other one.
The third one is very surprising because there's a huge shift in abortion statistics from the past. It used to be like, hey, I'm young, I still want my life, I'm not ready to be a mom. The majority of women who have an abortion in the United States already have a child or children. And this is where we in the church really need to hear what's happening, and we need to respond. What is God's solution right now? Because people used to say, like, well, if that mom just saw that heartbeat, if she really knew that there's a child there in her womb, she would never have an abortion. These moms know that. They've walked down that road. They've walked through so much pain that they say to themselves, I cannot do this again. And that's such a deep pain position. But then when we ask ourselves, to your point, of what happens when a person, goes back with a guy that they know their family and friends want them to ditch.
Right.
And she's pregnant again. What's our response to that person? Because that's the most likely person in the United States to have an abortion. What is our response to that repeat pregnancy? And
I think that's just hard on a human level, regardless of a Christian level. It's just hard on it because you're disappointed. Like,
yes.
We walked through, I've mentored you, you have the skills, right? And then how could you do that? And it's easy at that point to just be like, I'm going to walk away until you get yourself together. Man, that's tough because I don't think that's right to do it, but it's hard on the other side to keep walking it out.
Yes. And so what I focus on is that I'm a spiritual leader, and the words that I'm saying about this pregnancy is the introduction to this baby's life. And I'm not lying. I'm like, wow, I'm thrilled that you got pregnant again with this person who is really, harmful. Yeah, and it is clearly a terrible dad, and it's going to bring a lot of pain into your life, the baby's life. I'm not going to lie. Right. And I'm also not going to say things that I don't mean. But one of our key things at Cherish is that children are not valued by their circumstances. And so we do minister to women in war zones who got pregnant by the opposing tribe.
Right.
The most nightmare scenarios that you could ever have a child in. And the opposing tribe doesn't want the child. Her tribe doesn't want the child.
Right.
But the child has value before God.
Right.
And if she could see this child who came in the worst circumstances as something valuable. And what I say to people who are really traumatized is, could you think that a baby that came from you has no value? With the clear answer of no, right? Yeah. So,
but it frames it in a way.
It frames it in a different way. So to your point, I think that so many times, and I think it's the worst in our families, in our families, we just blurt out things, whatever we think at that moment. But the question of, what does God want me to speak in this situation? God, what does God want me to speak in this situation? And that practice, it is a practice that we get better at by using those skills.
She's 10 years in, so don't beat yourself in the head. But yeah, right.
And I had years in the juvenile hall of learning this too.
Right.
Like, my anger at your decisions and your viewpoint doesn't help you. What does God want me to say to you? And this is really what opens prophetic doors in really difficult, frustrating circumstances, that you can still be God's mouthpiece. You have to take your frustration, talk to your spouse about it, or write it out, or deal with it. Your frustration is going to be there. Don't let the frustration go on this person.
Oh my goodness. I wish I had 15 more sessions. I could talk to her for hours because of the wisdom and because of the practicality all rolled up into one. What I'm taking away from this is this. I have her on. I honor her as not just a woman in ministry, but just a person, because she chose to see people by the Spirit that other people weren't seeing, and not just see them, but step in. And you have to have a grace on your life to do that. She would tell you that. She's not just saying, hey, just launch in. But if God gives you a directive, do it, because there's a grace to do it. Is that fair to say?
Yes, very.
And the other part is not, even when they disappoint you, see prophetically into their life and speak to that.
Yes.
And so, I'm just, it's not profound to me, but it is, because it's so easy to lose track of because you're frustrated.
Yes.
And you're like, but what you said is put that away and see like God sees, and then train your mouth to speak what God speaks.
Yes.
That's what I'm going to take with me from today. So listen, guys, we as a church donate to her ministry monthly. If you'd like to donate, we're going to put a link in this. You can go on the website, or I don't know what we're going to put there, but it'll give you a chance to donate. It is, I can't speak highly enough of the ministry. I know her personally. I know Micah. I know the ministry. And trust me, your money's going to a good place. I have seen the testimonies. I have seen the results. Again, if I had more time, I would, we could just go story after story after story. But if you don't take anything else away, when people violate a hard no in God, that doesn't mean their story's ended, and you may be part of that redemption. Yeah. So step in, see what God sees, and speak what God speaks. And I think we're going to see the world start to turn around. So thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for taking time with us.
Thank you.
And look forward to the next time. We love you guys. God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon.